Uncle Doug.
Hello.
It's during this time of pandemic. You don't really. I haven't been to the salon, to the hair salon, in a minute.
The salon.
I don't know. So, Doug, I don't know about you. What does your hair look like?
Well, is greasy a look?
It's definitely a look.
I'm greasy.
You got those tres flores in your hair. You
That's
got
right.
The good goo.
Yeah, I'm in a place that is locked down so tight that I probably will not be able to get a haircut for the next 10 weeks or something.
Well, Uncle Mark, I have seen you with long hair.
Yeah, it was dreamy.
You have shown me that image.
Yes.
And I don't think you should go back to that.
I thank you. I'm trying not to, but here I'm stuck. So, well, we can talk about a very fancy hairstyle today, guys. That'd be kind of fun for those of us who haven't been able to do anything with our hair for the past year. So, quick note, I will be mentioning rape in this segment. Whether you're familiar with this particular grave in the graveyard of the gods or not, you'll see by the end how rape and rape culture are integral to this character's story. It's not a graphic description, and it is between fictional characters, but listen with that advisory. So, in this here Graveyard of the Gods segment, we take a lot of pleasure in exploring and eulogizing any number of gods who died long ago because the boys and girls stopped clapping for them, and thus they faded away from Tinkerbellus no Clappamus. No one believed in them anymore. Well, today's god, or sort of god, maybe isn't all the way dead. Although I don't think modern people, quote, believe in her, like think she actually lived in a ruined temple on an island before her being alive was rudely interrupted by a man in a skirt. But her name is mentioned all the time for reasons both good and bad, as we shall see. And that name is Medusa.
Oh.
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah, I don't know why we haven't talked about Medusa before. She's fantastic. So the real first mention, in writing anyway, of Medusa that we can find was in Homer's Iliad in the 8th century BCE, though scholars believe she existed in oral mythology for potentially thousands of years earlier. So she is very OG, original god. Her name likely comes from the ancient Greek word meaning guardian, and we'll see how her image is literally still used as a protective device to this day. According to the oldest written sources, she was one of three daughters of the very ancient Greek sea gods Phorcys and Ceto, and she lived out her life on an island called Sarpedon. Now, no modern Greek island bears that name, so there's not much agreement on which island it may be or if Sarpedon existed at all. In one of the earliest written descriptions of Medusa and her two sisters, Stheno and Uriel, by the poet Hesiod. There's a lot of Greek names I'm just going to murder in this, you guys, just like Perseus killed Medusa. But by the poet Hesiod, he said they were three women with snakes hanging from their belts. Yeah, that first description of the three Gorgon sisters, and they were the only three Gorgons. Later, Apollodotus described the sisters as having scales and golden wings, as well as huge boar-like tusks. But it wasn't until sometime in the 6th century BCE that the author Aeschylus, I can never say his name, described Aeschylus, thank you, described the three Gorgons thusly: near them, their sisters three, the Gorgons, winged with snakes for hair, hatred of mortal man. So the snakes have migrated from belts to hair over a couple hundred years. What's fascinating about mythology, or religion generally, but in this specific case, mythology, is people might grow up reading Greek or Norse myth and think the stories are fixed, that they're a static telling of a fully intact and agreed upon tale. But they're anything but. As I've shown just in the past couple paragraphs, over time they evolve and change to suit the purpose of the author and the times they live in, just like Medusa and her snake hair. She didn't start that way, but we wouldn't recognize her without her venomous coif. In fact, when I say Medusa, what version of her are you guys most likely picturing?
Oh, I'm 100% Clash of the Titans from the 80s.
Totally.
That's the only image I think I literally don't know if I know of another version of Medusa.
Well, I was just going to say, if you said Ray Harryhausen's stop-motion version from 1981's Clash of the Titans, you are correct.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Even though he took liberties with the myth and gave her a snake body and a rattlesnake tail, which is not something she has described as having. And furthering that theme, just 100 or so years later, the poet Pindar calls her fair-cheeked Medusa. So now she's becoming refined into something of the modern understanding of her. But it's the reworking of her origin story by the first century Roman poet Ovid that makes her the subject of so much dialogue today. Now, the Romans had pretty much grafted their whole pantheon and religion from the Greeks in an act of spiritual plagiarism that religions the world over still do to this day. Just claim old gods or holidays as your own, maybe at most renaming things like calling Athena Minerva and Poseidon Neptune, as Ovid does here. Ovid clearly did not care for Athena/Minerva, and guess who else did not? Poseidon, now called Neptune by the Roman author. Poseidon and Athena hated each other, and their rivalry splashed all over the poor mortals they backed in their endless proxy wars. In Ovid's retelling of the Medusa story, and I'm going to revert to the Greek names here because the Roman ones make me crazy. It's a Greek story. Medusa, unlike her monstrous sisters, was an incredibly beautiful mortal woman, which also is an odd retcon since she was born of two gods, making her fully a god according to the Greek rules of divine pedigree, but whatever. So one day, Poseidon espied her in one of Athena's temples. So here's the bit about rape. So to both assuage his desire for Medusa and to defile the temple of the virgin, his enemy, the virginal god Athena, he raped Medusa in the temple. This infuriated Athena, who took out her fury on Poseidon. Oh, wait, no, she didn't. She then turned the victim into the monstrous figure of Medusa we recognize today. Anyone who knows Greek, Roman, Norse, or most of the other polytheistic mythologies will know that this variety of gods are far more similar to mortal human beings than the gods of monotheistic religions like Yahweh and Jesus, who are so remote and supernatural they're almost impossible to define. The gods of the ancient Mediterranean were pretty much just lascivious assholes. Pigs, womanizers, very rapey, very vengeful, and very occasionally altruistic. So almost exactly like our monotheistic gods now that I think about it. But seriously.
Yeah, I was going to say,
they were all too
distinction
human.
Without a difference, my friend.
Pretty much.
If you're using 1981's Clash of the Titans as a resource, they were surprisingly white.
They were very, very not terribly Greek.
Well, the other thing about the gods is that though the monotheistic gods, the God of Abraham is meant to be omnipotent, and these gods just have some powers, but they're certainly not omnipotent.
Yeah,
he doesn't act omnipotent. He doesn't act like an omnipotent or even an omniscient god. He keeps getting tricked. He keeps talking about shit he can't do.
He's kind of omni-douche.
Somebody has an iron chariot, and he just throws up his hands like, I don't know what to do with that.
Yeah.
How do I beat that?
Yeah, it is interesting. And the gods, these gods really just tended to be much more like people, and they might have a power or two, but they don't have all the power.
Right.
That's
what I'm saying is I think Yahweh is the same. He just doesn't. He just pretends he's better. He pretends he's not.
Probably true, because he also sprang from a polytheistic culture, right?
Yeah.
So back to our story. So there's this guy Perseus. He thinks he's the total shit because his mom is gorgeous and his dad is a guy called Zeus. He is also both the half-brother and great-grandfather of Heracles, he who will become the greatest of Greek heroes of legend, because Zeus is his father as well. Zeus had a raging libido, all of eternity on his hands, and no concept of consent. So, like plenty of men today, right? So Polydectes, the king of Seriphus, was lusting after Perseus's hot mom, Danae. He knew he could not act on his passions with the very badass son, her very badass son Perseus around. So he gave Perseus a task that he knew he would not return from. He dispatched him to Sarpedon to kill Medusa and bring him her head. Welp, as always, the gods were listening in. Knowing this was a suicide mission, Athena assembled a team. She favored heroes generally and Perseus in particular. She gave him her mirrored shield. A pair of magical flying sandals came from Hermes. Hephaestus provided an unbreakable sword, oftentimes also described as a sickle. And Hades gave him a helmet that made him invisible. So suddenly, the odds were very much in his favor. So he gets to the island, uses the shield to prevent Medusa from turning him into stone, and whacks her head off. Side note, Medusa was, unfortunately, pregnant after her assault by Poseidon.
Oh, no.
Yeah.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, and it's about to get much stranger. When her head was severed, her unborn leapt from her neck stump fully intact. One of the twins was a young giant with a sword called Chrysor. Boys, can you guess who the other twin was? Go ahead and try.
Donald Trump.
You know the name.
Super Del Shanzi.
Almost. Pegasus.
Oh.
What?
Oh.
Pegasus, the winged horse.
The winged horse.
Yes.
Yeah.
The much beloved symbol of freedom and beauty and power is the result of the rape of Medusa by the god of the sea. The math checks out. Like, how many little girls have, like, Pegasus dolls and Pegasus on their notebooks and stuff, right?
Yeah, don't Google Pegasus origin.
Yeah.
Well, and the other thing is, like, you know, if you're gonna give birth as a quasi-human woman to a winged horse,
Fully grown.
I guess you go through the neck. I mean, how the hell are you gonna get it out?
Any opening will do, apparently. So,
Good Lord.
now, unlike some gods we've discussed, Medusa's power did not die with her. Perseus brandished her severed head to vanquish enemies. He turned the mighty god Atlas into stone, therefore ensuring no further shrugging. And, of course, he returns to Seriphus, where evil king Polydectes is about to force Danae into a non-consensual marriage, and in a deliciously ironic twist, Perseus shows the king the prize he dispatched him to deliver, the Gorgon Medusa's head, turning the king into a nice piece of statuary for the garden. At some point, Perseus had done all the vengeful calcifying he felt he needed to, and gifted the head to Athena, who put it on her aegis, which is a shield, as a protective device. That aegis can be seen in all kinds of places today as a sort of amulet known as a gorgonion. You can see it on all sorts of things like architecture in Italy, in corporate logos, and even the flag of Sicily, which very much... Yeah, you should look it up. The flag of Sicily, which looks very much like it should date the flag of the Isle of Man. A little saucy, vexillological humor for my fellow flag buffs out there. So, why do we talk about Medusa at all anymore? And why is she such a part of our collective consciousness? Sigmund Freud uses her name to describe a boy's fear of castration, especially upon seeing the genitals of a grown woman. So, but he's Sigmund Freud. What else is he going to do?
Messed up.
That has not been my experience, but fine. I'll allow it.
Yeah, you can go to, like, Google Sigmund Freud Medusa and try to make sense of what he's talking about, because I couldn't. Poets like Percy Shelley remade her as a symbol of feminine divinity and seductive power rather than a hideous monster. She was so alluring, men couldn't look away, right? It wasn't that she was so horrific. It was that she was so beguiling.
Right.
But it's modern feminism, or fourth wave feminism, and those who hate it, that are keeping the beheaded Gorgon in our social and political discourse today. From the early 20th century on, feminists have looked to Medusa as a perfect symbol of the toxic atmosphere women must still inhabit in a world full of unenlightened and even malevolent men. Think about it. She was born who she was. She was the victim of a horrendous crime by a man of vast physical and cultural superiority. He was a fucking god. And for the crime of being raped, she carries the rapist's babies to some sort of term, and another god punishes her for her own rape by rigging a game to have her killed. Is there a better metaphor for victim blaming and violent misogyny anywhere in religion or mythology? Don't answer that. That's almost all that religion and mythology are, right?
Yeah, I was going to say, you'll find it if you look.
Oh, it's you don't have to dig too deep.
So was the ability to turn people to stone, was that a power of hers, or was that a curse that was given to her after
that
her
was a
rape?
curse, which meant she would pretty much always be alone.
Right, because how can you be intimate or have friendship if everyone you look at turns to a statue.
Yeah,
I mean, I think we learned that question, the answer to that question, through COVID. You just wear masks and then you're fine.
Wear a mask. So many feminists see her as not just a victim, but as a symbol of empowerment. She didn't just give up when she was raped, cursed, and turned into a monster, and it was only the trickery of yet another man, albeit aided by a very powerful woman in Athena, that brought an end to her. And even after her death, her power persisted. What the world did and does find terrifying about women remained alive in her after her death. Her severed head still turning men into stone. Interesting note, there are no legends of any woman ever having been turned to stone by Medusa, dead or alive. Argentine,
Well, that would be rude.
That would be rude. And I don't know if she went back to live with her sisters, though. That I couldn't find. Argentine artist Luciano Garbati applied to New York City and was allowed to publicly display his beautiful work, Medusa holding Perseus's severed head, across from the courthouse where Harvey Weinstein was being tried for his seemingly countless rapes and assaults on women. You can look it up. It's really amazing. The statue shows a beautiful and nude Medusa holding a sword and the severed head of the hero demigod Perseus, thus flipping the script on the legend. And yes, there was definitely criticism of such a potent symbol or attempted symbol of the Me Too movement having been made by a man, and the inversion of the rape story being a little off the mark by her holding the head of Perseus, not of her rapist Poseidon. But there was this ancient woman / monster once again at the forefront of social and political discussion. And incidentally, I think if men, someone might vehemently disagree with me, but I think if men aren't part of the conversation in the Me Too movement, it will not have really succeeded. I mean, we are the problem. It behooves us to be part of the solution as well, no? And what of the enemies of modern feminism and their relationship to Medusa? Well, name a woman, especially one that leans to the left side or has of the political spectrum or has opinions like about video games, and I've got $5 that says you can find an image of her with snakes photoshopped onto her head. But it's not limited to horrible right-wing misogynists. There are also images of Margaret Thatcher with snake hair as well, even though I think snakes would probably find a comfortable home in her famous bouffant. During the 2016 presidential race, Medusa's head was reared as a terrifying weapon once again, but wearing the face of Hillary Clinton. There was even merch available on Trump's campaign website showing him as a slovenly Perseus holding Senator Clinton's severed head, complete with hissing vipers. Remember what happened to Kathy Griffin when she held up an absurdly fake Trump head in a photograph?
Right.
You guys, it's almost as if there's a different standard for women. I don't know
Weird.
I don't know why
I don't know how you make that claim.
I don't even know why I brought it up. It has nothing to do with this segment. So remember in episode 56 we talked about Lilith? She's a super fascinating character and always cast as a villain. But if you read her story, she's also pretty much a victim. Yet she's much more nuanced, and lots of women have adopted her as a sort of patron saint and symbol of misunderstood femininity. Based on Medusa's story, but more so on how two totally different sides of an argument on the treatment and rights of women have taken her as an avatar, I think she's the perfect symbol of feminine power. Small men who both lust after and despise women see her as a monster and a terrifying idea. Women who see her as symbolic of female victimization and empowerment see her as a champion, however tragic. And weirdly, they're both right from their perspectives, right?
Right.
So that's Medusa, who I think might be, she might be, of all the Greek pantheon, she might be the god that is still discussed the most these days.
She's an interesting one. And, all I have ever heard of her, I mean, I don't, it's not like I have a whole show that delves into Greek gods or whatever. I don't know a lot about the Greek pantheon, but like, I remember hearing, all I remember about her is snakes for hair.
Yeah.
Turns you into stone. And so I just thought she was just sort of one of the monsters. And, and so it is interesting to hear that, oh, no, that was all inflicted upon her.
Exactly.
And and she's meanwhile she's just a victim walking around.
This reminds me of is this reminds me of the 2011 album by that London-based punk rock band Medusa called "Can't Fucking Win."
There you go.
Did you just Google that, Doug?
I'm impressive, aren't I?
Is that true? You can't fucking win.
That's all true.
Oh, that's amazing.
I'm Googling things too, but I'm just adding this Trump with Medusa, with Hillary Medusa poster to my cart. Real quick.
But I agree with you, Uncle Dan. I had the only version of Medusa I have in my head entirely is that 2000 or that 1981 film, which does not hold up well, by the way. But yeah, I didn't know that she had a history, and I thought she was just a monster.
Yeah,
like
she
a
was created
or
a
a
monster.
scorpion.
Right.
Yeah, exactly.
And in some of the earlier texts, she kind of was, but then as the myth evolved over time, she never really had a backstory other than who her parents were.
Right.
And then when she finally got a backstory, and was one of the male god's many rape victims, she's super fascinating. Poseidon never paid a price for any of this, right?
Yeah.
No, Perseus didn't pay a price for this, so it's pretty fucked up.
Well, let's bring her back. She never left.
That's right.
Yeah.
All right.
Well, go put somebody's face on a flag, and we'll
go Sicily.